Hi. So behind me, you can see on the wall, there's a poster that covers the timeline of mathematics from 1000 to 1950. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through on threads. I'm doing this where I'm going through and picking a different mathematician each week and discussing their contributions to mathematics. But I thought I would also share that on my YouTube channel, which is the Better Brain podcast. And I want to give a little background into this poster first before we go into highlighting different mathematicians. At some point in the 80s, I remember late 80s, early 90s, going to the Museum of Science and seeing this Mathematica exhibit, which you see the picture of here from the Boston Museum of Science. And on the back wall was the poster that I just showed you. And I really liked it. And my mother worked at the museum at the time. And so I mentioned to her, and she said, "Oh, I think there's a poster of it. I'll see if I can get it for you." So she got it for me. The poster is from IBM. And so this mathematic exhibit, which I remember being late 80s, it's actually 1981 was when it first started. So anybody in the Boston area, you may have remembered this from the 80s, and I don't know how long it existed for, but I also assumed it was at other museums. Let me know if you had encountered a mathematic exhibit like this one at one of your museums or not. But anyways, the poster by IBM was created actually way back in 1961. And it was for educational purposes, and they gave it to different educational institutions, and some of them incorporated it into their curriculum. I don't recall ever seeing that in my education, but maybe some of you have. But anyways, let me take a closer look at the poster. So this is the first half of the poster, and it goes from 0 AD basically to 1400, or actually to around 1400. But the key thing you'll see is that the title is Men of Modern Mathematics. So apologies to the women of mathematics. But this was 1961. So it is kind of a relic of its time. And I think if they did it today, they would do it differently. In fact, I did some research. I think in 2011 or 2012, they released a tablet version of this poster in which they do include women mathematicians. And obviously the title is probably different. It's probably just History of Modern Mathematics, which is what it should have been in the first place. For going forward here, basically the history of modern mathematics starts with algebra. And so that's what we're probably going to start with when we start picking people off of this list. And you can see if you look at the second half of the picture, there's a huge increase in the density of the number of people. So you can kind of see the acceleration of advances in mathematics. So just to set the table for future discussion. So this is the history of modern mathematics, what's happening prior to this map being created, this timeline being created. So around 600 AD, you have the first documented instance of zero as a mathematical concept. And this came from India. It may have existed prior, but this is the first documented case of it. It existed in written language previously as a concept of emptiness or nothing, but not in a mathematical sense. And prior to that, in around 300 AD, you had the Chinese documenting negative numbers. And it's kind of interesting that there's like a 300-year gap between negative numbers and zero. You think once you had negative numbers, kind of lead to zero right away, but communication at the time being what it was, that kind of explains probably the huge gap in time. But anyway, so that's where we are. And when we start to do this, you'll see like algebra, even at the beginning, it's not written in forms it's not formulaic. It's not X's and Y's. It's all done in words. And so that will bring us to our first mathematician that we're going to talk about, which is Omar Khayyam, who you might know more as a poet.